Hello and welcome back to Web3 Unpacked. I'm Rich Pasqua, and joining us today is Kevin Callahan, CEO of Uniblock, a free platform that sits on top of the best developer tools and provides a simple, unified API gateway to the world of Web3 technologies. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And you've got a pretty cool background, having worked with Twitter and most recently Coinbase. That's a pretty big thing for feather in your hat, I should say, for being in the Web3 world. Great exposure. And we're going to get into more about you and Uniblock as we go through the interview. But one of the things, you and I, Kevin, had a conversation, I think a week or two ago, and you've got a pretty interesting background in tech, Web3. I always like to ask, founders, CEOs, CTOs, the people really kind of creating the tools that we use on Web3. How did your journey start in Web3?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me specifically, I have a passion for finance and personal finance and helping people to kind of achieve their goals and being able to, get outside of this cycle of working just to survive. So that's one part of just like my psyche I'm very interested in. And then clearly entrepreneurship and tech is something else. And over the course of my career, they kind of converged. And so I tell a story about, I worked at a company called Wattpad, which was the largest social network for writers with about 100 million users, and then Twitter, and then Coinbase. And one thing that all those three platforms have in common is Union Square Ventures, Fred Wilson and Albert Wenger. And they are some of the earliest investors in a lot of the different projects and protocols that we enjoy. And so at the time, Fred used to write his daily blog. It was very well known for it, and he did it for a decade plus. And so starting in maybe 2015, I started reading more of his blogs talking about kind of smart contracts and Ethereum, and talking a little bit more about how that technology was evolving. And so that started to kind of pique my interest, and that's how it started. So clearly I was aware of Bitcoin. And he opened my mind to kind of like how it can evolve. And so that started probably 2014, 2015 and continues to today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a similar journey that I had as well. Sitting in a room full of technologists and developers, and you can't help but hear some of the underground rumblings of Bitcoin back in the day, whether it be 2015, 16, whatever it may be. I think it was 2013 for me, and it was completely foreign. And you look at it from a monetary standpoint, and then you read the white paper, and you're like, wow, this not only can change technology, but really the human interaction between technology and people themselves. So very, very, very exciting. And a great start to Web3. And here you are, right? So can you, let's dive into Uniblock, because it really is an interesting set of tools. Can you give us like the high level, and then maybe we'll just peel back the layers a little bit as we go, the high level of it?
Yeah, so we are builders by trade, by heart. And so we were building lots of different projects for ourselves, for our friends, for customers. And so we had, front row seats to Alchemy, Morales, QuickNode, all the best tools. And, we started to realize that we were using all these different APIs across all these different products and services. And, we started to think, well, there's got to be an easier way to kind of do this. And so when we started to think about it, it became clear that there was an opportunity to create a layer that abstracts away all the complexity. And what I mean by that is their APIs don't necessarily all work together. They have different billing cycles. They have different ways to work together. And so when we kind of sit on top of that, we make it a lot easier for the developers. And so when you work through us, again, you get access to dozens of different tool sets. You get fallback. So if one of them breaks, we'll automatically give you another one. If that one breaks, we'll give you another one. We can load balance. We can do all these really interesting things. And then even little things that might not seem annoying, like for example, having 5 different bills that are, charging across the course of a month, or having, 5 different API keys. So we just try to make everything a lot easier. So we have one case study that we've launched or just released that we saved one of our customers about $200,000 in upfront cost. We also saved them about 3 months of work, which is really nice. Then, of course, over the course of the project, we're saving them a few $100s in payments every month. And then we save them about 0.5 FTE, because a lot of these tools break, as you know, or they're really new, so they're constantly evolving. And so you have to stay on top of it. And that 0.5 FTE now doesn't necessarily have to make sure all the tools are, still working together. They can work on the actual product. So we're releasing that case study that kind of just shows like we've saved this particular company $300,000 in the first year, and then ongoing, it'll continue on. So that's who we are. That's what we're doing. That's the problem that we're trying to solve.
You and I had spoke, a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned, and as I was trying to kind of understand Uniblock's world and your world a little bit better, you brought up a good point, Kevin, in the sense that, there's tons of people starting businesses out there, right? But if you really identify a white space and a need and a gap within an industry, whether it be small, medium, or large, that is the best way to kind of go about it. And that's what I hear from you guys, is you're trying to solve developer problems, everyday problems. So finance, I didn't even realize the whole economics of it, and saving money just through the subscriptions and refining that process as well. On top of all the great tools that are just going to be at developers' fingertips. So awesome. I love it. Now you mentioned Alchemy, Covalent, QuickNode. What other tools are you guys planning on implementing, and how far do you go with it?
Yeah. So Web3 is very unique because there are numerous protocols that we weren't talking about 6 months ago that are extremely popular now. Even ones that we left for dead, like Solana, are now coming back with a vengeance. And so the various technologies are continuously coming out. Every month we're seeing a new L1 or L2, L0, L3. We're seeing verticals that weren't even popular a couple months ago that are now popular. So obviously we had we had GameFi, we had DeFi, and now you're seeing like InsureFi, you're seeing all these really HealthFi, you're seeing all these interesting things come out. So the depth and breadth of what's coming out is constantly increasing. So I don't think we'll stop. I think it feels like every week a new product comes on our radar, and somebody's building really great tech for, let's say it's, again, a Solana, or maybe they're building something for health tech. And so we can say, okay, great. If you're building amazing developer tools, we want to partner with you. We want to bring you the developers. So to answer that question, I don't think we're ever going to stop. It feels like crypto is really early days. More and more things are coming out, so more and more need for what we're doing. Right now, we have our API suite, which is, it's something about 200 different APIs are currently available and growing pretty much every week. We have our unified smart contract product. So you'll get like the best smart contracts from all the best companies that are right there. We have our listener product. So if you're looking for something to happen on the blockchain and you want to listen for it, and then you want to make a reaction, that product's available as well. And we have like our unified billing and everything else. So we have our 3 main products and all the sub features and products under that. We've got multiple other products coming out down the pike as well. So it's still really early days for us, because more and more developer tools are coming out, every week that are being built for all the different technologies. So it's an extremely exciting time to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and I would imagine you would have tons of developers making inquiries like, hey, are you going to add this or add that? Do you have like a section on your site where you can kind of listen to the community and, see what they're their needs are?
Yeah, so we are pretty open. I mean, we're pretty active on Twitter, on Discord. You can email us, our Telegram, our website. So we really love working for all of our developers. So if you have an idea, if you have something you need, if frankly, if you are building something, let us know. But that happens pretty much every week or so. Somebody comes and says, "Hey, I'm building this, or I'm building that, or I require this, or I require that." And that gives us signal for what to prioritize in the future.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to what the sentiment is from the developer community, because this is it's a great suite of tools. What are they saying?
So again, we are able to save people pretty significant money. There's not a lot of developers out there that want to spend the extra time and money doing the back end. The reality is people want to build for their customers. They want to build a great front end and build the great product up front. So we have, rave reviews. People love the availability. They love the ease of use, and they like saving money. So pretty much whenever we talk to somebody, people start nodding, the lights go on. They're like, "Oh, this makes a lot of sense." I actually had coffee and breakfast on Sunday with a developer, ex-Coinbase. They're building a ability for you to kind of remit payments through blockchain. And when I just kind of explain what we're doing, he's like, "That's so needed. That's awesome." And so they'll probably come on as a customer in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, people seem to love it, and we're excited.
Awesome. And it's very refreshing. And I know you come from a product background, that you're actually listening to your audience, you're listening to your customers, and rinse and repeat, build and discover and kind of create, and then listen and adjust from there. So that's really great. And with that product background, some of our listeners are product people, some of them are marketing people, and in this world, for a lot of people, it's Web3 is still a bit of a mystery. And what we try to do here through Web3 Unpacked is kind of bring, agency people into this world, and see marketing people, designers, UX folks. With that said, can you give us a breakdown? Because this is kind of an ingredient product, if you will, right? How are you guys marketing Uniblock right now?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different channels. Obviously, meeting people like yourself is helpful because you have your audience. But one is our co-marketing. So we have co-marketing with all of our integrations, which is great because they're looking for developers to start using their tools. So that's been a very great channel for us. Another one is marketing with the protocols. So if you are a protocol and you're looking for developers, or you're just looking for a way to get people to build on your tool set, pointing to Uniblock is a great idea. So that's another channel. We also really try to do a lot of content, a lot of high quality content. So if you look at our blog, which gets disseminated through LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., we're trying to think about thought pieces that we can do. So one thing, for example, is our 2023 wrap, kind of similar to what Spotify does, but for crypto. And sitting kind of where we are in the developer stack, we get a lot of information about what things are doing well. So for example, again, I've kind of said it before, but Solana, it's not dead. People seem to be building on top of it. Really cool. Parts of the world where we're seeing a lot of building. So Southeast Asia, parts of Africa. So we're seeing developers from those parts of the world coming in and really using the product and kind of coming back. And also what people are building. So we're seeing people building tokenized assets on our platform. We have people doing social networks. We have people doing things like ticketing. So can we tokenize your hotel rooms or things like that? So we've got this really cool, interesting information that we create content around, which is also another way to go to market. But those are three of the ones that we've kind of done thus far.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And that's what a lot of people are doing. Even, marketing through Discord and other scenarios where you can unlock special tokens for certain portions of your audience or your customer base. That's something that we're actually working on here. Opening up, green rooms and special environments for, people who are, either contributing or speakers or whatnot. So fantastic. And, one of the things, we always like to explore the technology that guys like you are building. But we also like to take a peek under the hood and say, hey, how did you get started with your partners? How did you meet your partners? How did the idea come together from a human standpoint?
Yeah. So I had a couple of startups. One of them I sold to a telco. And then spent several years working with, other startups, other tech companies, and helping other founders kind of, reach their goals. And it was always a goal of mine to do another startup and to be successful. So it's one of those things where if you're on your deathbed, what's the one thing you'll regret? And I think for me personally, if I don't have a startup and we're not like a modicum of success, I would regret that. So I always knew that was something that I would be doing. And there was 3 kind of conditions that I required to be kind of a yes. One was, what's something that I could build for the next 5-10 years and still be passionate about it? So clearly blockchain, and kind of what we're working on is that. The second thing is being in kind of like a financial and mental state where I could dedicate 80-90 hours a week, and luckily without getting paid. And luckily, we were in that position just because of a couple of exits that we had over the course of the last couple of years. And then the third thing was, to your point, finding the people to work with that you're willing to go shoulder to shoulder with at war for the next several years. And so those 3 things were really important to me. And when I met, the first co-founder, David, he was working on a project actually with a friend of mine, and we kind of started chatting and talking. And over the course of several months, almost like dating. So we went and played pool. We went and had ice cream together, and just did the whole YC, question answer. And I think for me, is this person going to put in 110%? Are they somebody that I want to work with for, when things are bad? Everything's great when things are good, but it's when things fall apart that you want to make sure you're still going to be there and be able to get things done. And so that's how we met. So David is our CTO and the technologist, and then James was also working with David, and he's our VP Eng. And they're both extremely intelligent, have been working in blockchain for 5+ years. David actually teaches blockchain at the university level to help people get into the space. So yeah, it's a really great team. But that's how we got together, and that's kind of the formula for it.
Yeah, matching up, energy levels and, efforts and all this good stuff. And, you mentioned it, you have to be compatible on the good days and the bad days, right? And, one of the biggest ingredients to being a founder or starting an ambitious project, whether it be 2.0 or 3.0, is fundraising, right? And I know you guys have done pretty well so far. You literally are just kind of getting out of the gate, I think a year or a year plus, year and a half now for you guys. Mm-hmm. And you've raised over $2.3 million from investors like Cadenza and our friends at Blockchain Founders Fund, Ali, it's great group of people over there. I don't care what industry you're in, raising money in a bear market is horrendous. It's frightening. And you guys seem to have done it pretty well and keep moving forward and, continuing that forward motion. If you were to give one or a couple of pieces of information to people who may be listening here that want to start their own project, what kind of advice would you give them from a fundraising
from a fundraising perspective? So I think people need to reset their expectations. So when COVID hit, money was cheap, and 2020, 2021, first half of 2022, it was actually fairly easy for people to raise. People would go out with a deck and they would raise $5 million on $25 million, and they would kind of go from there. And those days, at least for now, are done. Maybe they'll come back in a couple years, but right now it's a lot harder than that. And I meet with a lot of founders who are just starting to get going, and it's, they're like, okay, I want to talk to these 3 VCs. And I'm like, those are rookie numbers. You need a lot more than 3, because you don't even know if they're deploying. You need to have some critical mass and some pressure for people to start to kind of like actually give you term sheets. So I would say reset your feelings about how the market is, and assume it's probably back to where it was in 2016, 2017. It's a little harder. So that means you're going to have to be more prepared, buttoned up. You have to work a lot harder. You have to track everything and do a good job tactically. And so that's what I would say. I would say that the money is there, but it's a lot harder to unlock. So you just have to work a lot harder. Generally you're probably doing over 100, meeting with 100 VCs to get your pre-seed or seed kind of sorted. So, maybe in the past it was 10, now you're 10xing that number. So it is a numbers game, but you also have to do a good job with each call. And I think that's the main thing, is that founders are expecting, okay, I'm going to talk to this one person, it's going to unlock something. Or I'm going to talk to these 3 people, it's going to unlock and it's going to make sense. No, you definitely, like, nobody's going to come and start making sense for you. You have to push really hard. So yeah, just reset it and work harder.
Yeah, solid advice there, and it's ongoing. It's not the old ICO days, which to me was a disaster for investors or anyone else. It was a giant rug pull for 90% of them, and that puts a bad taste in people's mouths. And VC and other investors kind of become a little skittish, and they drip some of the funds out because they want to see how the Web3 ecosystem is going to track, and what the return on their investments could look like. So you have to keep chipping away at it. And I like your thought, Kevin, of documenting things, and people often forget that. I have to do that with certain things, like new business stuff. Did I return those calls? Did I get the ducks over? Did I do this? It's good to keep yourself in check and your partners in check as well. So great stuff. Now, heading back to kind of like the human capital of a startup, if you will, what does the Uniblock team look like? Because it's interesting for our audience to hear, how a team's built up, how are they managed, and then, where are they? Are they global? Are they local? Give us a sense of that.
Yeah. So one thing I think that is our superpower is recruiting the best people. So we've got primarily engineers. So our team is almost exclusively builders and engineers, which is very different than other startups that are primarily marketing or sales. So we are definitely product and engineering led. My co-founder teaches blockchain at the university level. I teach product and entrepreneurship at the university and college level. And so, frankly, we're able to be in class and say like, hey, this person's amazing, come work with us. And we put people on projects that haven't been done before. So, if you want to scratch that itch and actually build something that nobody's done in a space that's still evolving, Uniblock is the place to go. And these are the people that have offers to go at like Facebook or Google, but they choose to work on this because they feel like it's an outsized opportunity to make an impact. That's the other thing. Everybody here makes a pretty large impact. The most junior, newest person to the most senior person. We're a small team. We move really quickly. And so really whatever you do has to, make an impact. And so one thing I try to say is that we're building a product and we're building a company. So that's really cool. You get to help build a company, and we're building an industry as well. So there's, you're not just a cog in a wheel trying to change a color on a website at Google. You're literally like deploying, really important code that's not been deployed in that way before. So a product, company, and the company, you get to actually decide, like, how do we want to work? Like, do we want to do all hands? What does all hands look like? Like, how do we, some people are on different time zones. Like, how do we make that all work? So you're helping us think through that, which is really cool, and build a company you want to work for. And then the in-whole industry. So again, like, nothing we've done has been done before. So, and this is actually a space which is fascinating, because if you and I wanted to invest in AI startups, it's a lot harder. But if you want to invest in, crypto, you can invest in the protocol layer, you can invest in the token layer. So everything we do has an impact all the way down to the investors, which could be, your mom and pop down the street. So the vast majority of the company, the team, is in North America, very driven individuals, mostly engineers.
Yeah, and it doesn't take giant bloated teams. Sometimes that makes things a lot harder, especially from a management perspective. So a little bit more lean and mean keeps everyone focused and engaged, for sure. And you brought up, building an industry, and this is kind of near and dear to me, because guys like you and I have an inside look into Web3 companies, small, medium, and large, right? Different protocols, all of this stuff. But what we also see, that there are human beings behind this. And, it's great. Hey, BlackRock and everyone else with the ETFs and new money flooding into the market. And that's great. But what really excites me, and I think for you too, is the idea of actually contributing to building an entire industry that has its own ecosystem unto the markets themselves, and is really, really happening. And if more people understood that and saw that, they would have less trepidation stepping or dipping their toes into this market, whether it be through investments or actually VC or personal investments, or actually taking on your own projects. So really important. And while we're on the topic of teams, because I know kind of management and leadership is a big deal for you, Kevin, right? And I know you take a lot of pride in it. And, the 2.0 world, tech world, goes up and goes down, but those waves are a lot slower, right? And sometimes a lot less aggressive. 3.0 world is, hold on for dear life sometimes, right? How do you keep and you kind of dotted on it a little bit, how do you keep your teams engaged when it's a bear market, when things might be a little slower than expected? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And I think it's almost the flip. So my take is that companies die in the bull market, and that's when people start to overhire. They get over their skis, they start spending too much money, money's easy to get. And then all of a sudden it's not. And to your point, it just falls off a cliff. And that's happened, every cycle. It's a 4-year cycle, and we're kind of at the early innings of the four-year cycle now. And so I kind of saw this, from the outside. I saw this on the inside of Coinbase. And one thing that I try to look at is, okay, how do we lead this team over the course of that entire cycle? How do we take that the variability out? Because it's hard to stay focused on building if you're worried about paying your rent. You're worried about your job being there. Mm-hmm. So I think for us, it's how do we make sure that the team stays focused? How does everybody still feel like we're getting things done? So there's a lot to it. But I think first off is being aware that decisions we make today can impact us down the road. And so we raised money in a bear market when things were tough. And now that things are getting better, it's like kind of like a lot easier for everybody. Clearly, there's more investor interest from the retail side. On the VC side, there's a lot more interest, more developers coming into it. Big companies are coming back. We're seeing Larry Fink and them say, hey, everything's going to be tokenized. So, yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's how do we make sure that we have more than enough runway that we need? How do we spend thoughtfully on the company? How do we build everything in a sustainable way? And how do we build kind of like the next, let's say, Plaid for crypto, or how do we build the next like Twilio for crypto? So yeah, I think that's part of it. I think also I really look at everything in these milestones. And so I think we're too early for OKRs, and I know, people love them or hate them, but I think it's okay, everybody, we're trying to get our MVP out the door, or we're trying to, onboard our, big customers like an Accenture or an Ernst & Young, or we're trying to, bring out this new feature. And so usually those are somewhere between 30 and 90 day milestones, and everybody's kind of focused on that and getting that out the door. So I think a couple things just to summarize. One is, well, actually, we're building, again, a product, a company, an industry, and that industry is greatly impacted by macro and investors. So just being aware of that, leading the team through it, letting people have visibility into like several years of how we're building, and then keeping everything into smaller chunks. Because if you're saying, hey, we're going to be the next $10 billion Plaid for crypto, and then you just leave, it's like, okay, great. Like, but okay, so I'm the developer. How do I like go back to my desk? Like, what am I doing? So you can have that like overarching goal, that vision, but then you have to back it up into, okay, here's our milestone. Here's where we're going to be. Here's how we build it, and how you make an impact. And that last part with impact, again, I think we do a good job of hiring superstars that want to make that impact, and so allowing them to do it. So, for example, we need to think about how to create a billing feature that spans dozens and dozens of companies that works together. And that's like actually, when you start to think about that, it actually becomes a pretty complicated thing to build. And we try to have people come together and think through it, so people have a lot of ownership and can speak up. So I think ownership is another part of our secret sauce here at Uniblock.
Yeah, and managing people is really, really challenging. I managed creative folks, and you brought up a lot of great points here. Whereas finances, like I don't want to worry about the house of cards coming down on us. I just want to do great stuff. And the very nature of Web3, if you're someone doing podcasts, developing front ends, or developing UIs for it, or whatever it may be, you're there because it's a new puzzle. It's a grand puzzle. And it's something to fix and build and help create. It's not just, hey, let's put up a website. Great. If I see another website, I'm going to throw up. But blockchain technology has so many moving parts. It's very detailed, and the architecture that goes into it, whether you're developing or designing, is pretty intense. And that's the nature of why people are there. And Kevin, I love that you're very strategic with your, not only the roadmap of Uniblock, the company, but with your teams as well. Now, with that said, because again, some of our listeners may be, starting something up, whether it be 2.0 land or 3.0 land, getting an inside look from founders like yourself, I always like to ask the question, what are some of the biggest challenges or hurdles you and your partners have had over the past year and a half starting Uniblock?
Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken about raising funds, but obviously when you're trying to be counter-cyclical, it's always going to be difficult because investors are humans, and everything in their bones is saying, hey, crypto's dead, get on AI. And so, and frankly, a lot of them, their LPs are saying, don't do a capital call, all my tech stocks are down, now's not the time. So if you're going to do something that's counter to the herd, then you have to be willing to push forward. So that we've already talked about, but that's what I'll say. We knew that that's what we were getting into. And I think that the whole idea was it would give us a 1.5 year lead on anybody else building this. So now we've got almost 2 years ahead of anybody else, which is really good. Um, I think one thing I've struggled with, to your earlier question, is getting ahead of ourselves in the bull market that we know is coming. And so I think some teams start to focus too much on token pricing. I think there's some perverted incentives around that. So instead of building the right product for their customers, they're trying to, think about what their token looks like for their retail investors. And I think that is problematic. And I think something that stems from that, I can only imagine being in Slack or Discord or whatever, and just, putting rocket ships everywhere. And I think like that gets everything that goes up and down, like the volatility in the space is pretty high. So if you're just shooting off rockets for 9 months in your Slack, what happens when the market kind of comes down? People start to say, "Oh, there's no more rockets. That dopamine hit is gone." So something I'm trying to be thoughtful about is being a little bit more even keeled, where it's we're not sure Bitcoin ETF. Hey, happy Bitcoin ETF day. And we move on. And that's something that you see quite a lot in traditional tech. So, pretty famously, you see kind of the Zuckerbergs of the world say, "Oh, the stock went up. We went public. All right, everybody, have your cake, go back to work." Or you saw, I think it was Tim Cook's message when they got bigger than Microsoft. It's like, "Hey, everybody, we're bigger than Microsoft. Okay, back to work." Yeah. And so I think that is the type of mentality that we need, because if you're just trying to pump up your token, what happens when the token goes down? Your employees are going to start thinking that their worth is being attached to the token rather than their impact is impacting the whole company as a whole. So something that I'm working on as a leader in the company is keeping that excitement, but then realizing that, again, companies die in the bull market, because if you got everybody hopped up on dopamine that, oh my God, the token goes up, what happens when it goes down 90%? So something I'm just thinking about and would share with the listeners.
Yeah, and that's great, because this industry 3.0 world is filled with short bursts of dopamine. There's no shortage of it. And I have to laugh sometimes when you see younger people in the industry on X or whatever platform you're on, and it's what happened to the ETF. I thought we were mooning. I thought we were doing this. It's like, no, well, people have to kind of buy in. There's still some marketing to be done. But anytime the cycle, through any cycle, there's extreme highs, extreme lows. And your idea of patience is so important, whether you're, doing quick trades or you're a macro investor or you're building. You have to take things in stride, and educating your team to understand that. Don't panic. Once you panic, you're done for. And watch the markets, of course. We all do, but it's all part of this world, and you do have to take things in stride. And it's funny to see people's first cycles. It's they're pretty much throwing up, and it's like, no, hold on, the game ain't over yet. And move on, and things get better, and things progressively get better. So it's interesting and fun to watch sometimes, but patience and just having a very calm, even keeled about it, and about yourself and your team, and not losing focus of what you're doing, because nothing is going away. It's just the market's hiccuping.
Yeah.
So now, with that said, since you're developing, tools for developers to work on, and this is a little bit loaded, Kevin, but where do you see the blockchain development going in the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah. So I'm seeing key themes kind of emerge. One theme is just the ease of use, which is something that we're really striving to make easier. And UX and usability is something we're seeing on the consumer side clearly, but it's actually equally, if not more important on the developer side, because if developers can build stuff, what developers are a leading indicator what we will enjoy as consumers. And so if you make the tools easier for people to come in and build stuff, then we as consumers will enjoy them faster. And so we're seeing that happen quite a bit. A lot of people, a lot of developer tools are really investing in that space. And so again, we've got dozens of companies that are partnering with us. But almost every week, I see another tool set that's coming out that makes something easier. And so I think the developer experience is something that we're seeing quite a bit, which is really good. Another thing we're seeing a lot of is, when you ask people on the street about crypto or blockchain or Web3, it tends to be around the token or the price of the asset. And that's fine. And that's kind of where we started. But I think right now what we're seeing is what is always been promised, which is what is that new use case? And so again, I actually haven't mentioned on this call yet, but we have something called a very interesting builder program. And so, excuse me, I touched my nose. The very interesting builder program is our way of leaning in if somebody's building something, world changing. And on that program, we've got social networks, we have the ticketing, we have all these really cool things. And so when I talk to somebody that isn't a believer about blockchain, they say, sure, but what's that killer use case? And I feel like we're getting there because the social networks that were built a couple years ago were really janky, and that incremental user is going to say, well, I'm just going to use Twitter. I'm just going to use Reddit. Why am I going to use this product that doesn't work? It's too complicated. It's too broken. But now they're starting to be snappy. The experience is good. So we're seeing social networks kind of do well with Friendtech, 0x People, a bunch of other ones that are really cool. We're seeing real world assets that we talked about with Larry Fink. And so whether that be tickets, bonds, stocks, we're going to see a lot of things kind of start to show their way and manifest onto the blockchain. And so there's companies, all types, that are trying to incentivize that. So this is a really interesting time because I'm kind of a little bit of a heathen because I believe Web 2 and Web 3 will live in harmony. And sometimes it makes sense to have a centralized product, and sometimes it makes sense to have a decentralized product, and sometimes it makes sense to have a blend of the two. You can say, all right, you know what, we want to have Reddit, and we want to have maybe the ads product, some way to give back to creators, and then maybe there's some way to give tokens and whatever, for example. And so we think that making that easier to build, so the developer experience, will enable more things to be, in Web3 and kind of go back and forth. So those are the two big things that I'm excited about: developer experience and just the what is Web3 is starting to get sorted. Other than just trading tokens, which is great, but I think there's a lot of really cool experiences beyond that.
Yeah, well said. And there is an education. It's not just for, hey, let's bring on the Wall Street bros and, have them go crazy with an ETF. No, we knew they were going to do that anyways for a very long time. But it is about educating business folks on the power of what decentralized networks can do and tools can do. So that's ongoing, I think, every single day. Frankly, it is an entire education process, but we're getting there. And the idea of use cases are bubbling up. Right now, guys like you and I actually have to look for them, right? We know someone who's developing something. It's just not that easy for people to see these. They are happening. And it will become a little bit, faster and smoother in the coming years. That will definitely help. But I love the idea that you guys are supporting the user experience by supporting the developer experience. right? So I come from a very, UX and design heavy background, creative background, and it really does. You just can't bolt on a creative director to a project and have them understand systems engineering and architecture, right? So there needs to be this kind of middle ground of continuous education up and through sideways through the organization, so that that end user in a wallet or on a website can have that great Apple-like simple technology has disappeared experience, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Agreed fully. And actually, on that last point, one thing that I believe pretty firmly is that we'll be there when we stop talking about the technology. When a consumer is just like, I just want to get my Starbucks. I don't care that it's on the blockchain. I just want my, stars and points. We're not there yet. We definitely spend a lot of time talking about the virtues of EVM versus Solana or whatever, and kind of the intricacies of smart contracts and on-ramp and blah, blah, blah. But when those of us like myself, like when we're successful, it'll be super simple, and consumers are going to say, oh, it won't even be a wallet. It's going to say, oh, I'm just going to go and collect my stars for, my paying for my gas. And it'll be super simple. By gas, I mean petrol. I don't mean like, yeah. We're getting there. I think we're getting there. So consumers don't need to worry about it. Because how many times do you think can sit there and say, oh, I really care about my HTTPS, or I want to talk about the iOS operating system? You don't. You just want to get the app and you want to, pay for your coffee.
Love it. And, that's something I preach. As soon as the technology goes away, that's when you get extreme adoption and comfort, basically, which is awesome. And you brought up Solana. I actually think Solana is doing a pretty good job of understanding the macro, the 40,000 foot view of the Web3 environment with Solana Spaces. Obviously, their tokens and the gas and the tools. But they also have the phone coming out. They're really looking at the whole ecosystem as a whole. I sometimes wonder if they're biting off more than they could chew at once, but they're very ambitious. They're doing a pretty good job of creating experiences that are pretty seamless. So I think they're doing a pretty good job. I think everyone else has to kind of catch up. Now, with that said, and talking about tech, and obviously we don't have crystal balls, you and I, but all of this is really good for us to kind of ponder and think about as we go. And one of the bigger themes these days, right, whether you're in 2.0 land or 3.0 land, is the use of AI, right? How, I have my personal opinions on AI, but how do you see AI affecting the developer community, in the next couple of years, because it is profound?
Yeah, I think we're seeing AI impact blockchain through various parts of the cycle, or various parts of the chain, and then we're seeing blockchain impact AI starting to happen more often. So on the developer side, I think we're seeing more and more developers being able to utilize some AI. I think some of it's great. Some of it still needs to get there. But we're seeing some of our teammates use it. So it just speeds up how you work, right? It helps you with your emails. It helps you with your content. It helps you with your developer experience. So in general, AI is like speeding us up, and it'll get better. I think it's fine. Better than it was 2 years ago. I don't know, Siri's garbage. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. And on the flip side, we're seeing a lot of startups try to bring blockchain to AI and say like, okay, we're going to help you with rights management. We're going to help you with understanding if this is synthetic or if this is actually Kevin Callahan and Rich Pasqua on the call, right? So there's lots of ways to use that technology, and so we're seeing lots of startups kind of play with it, which is really cool. So I think both technologies are cutting edge. Both technologies help each other. I think people forget that we've gone through multiple AI booms and busts. So we had the 2015 boom and bust. we had like the 2017, 2018 boom bust of AI. And now we're in a bit of a boom, although unfortunately it looks like, rappers and things like that might not be the holy land that people thought they were. So yes, I think they're helping developers, they're helping marketers, we're helping just general employees kind of move faster. And I think it's working both ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And, from my perspective, it's an ingredient, it's a tool. It's not, hey, let's start an Web3 AI company. It just doesn't happen that way. And I think it'll be used in really intelligent ways and clever ways through supply chain tracking and things like that and beyond. There's wonderful ways to use it for circumventing human decision making when it's appropriate. Some people would argue, hey, developers, if I see this headline one more time, I don't know what I'm going to do, but, developers beware, AI is coming for your job right now. I don't know of any AI algorithms or systems that will do Solidity or Rust, that's pretty detailed. And that's a language and platform that's actually being developed as it's going. So I don't know if AI is going to have impact that way from a Web3 standpoint too much. But yeah, it's good. Everything in moderation, and everything needs a job to do, right? Just don't fluff up things.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, if I could chime in. So there's two views of the world. There's the new technology is going to be like buggy whips, and you're going to be the last buggy, company, and you're dead. And it kills jobs, and everything is kind of like zero sum. And then there's the resource unconstrained, where if everybody has AI, we can do 10x the amount. Actually, sure, there's a bit of a rebalancing of who's doing what, but the GDP of the world increased exponentially, and it's kind of like when the internet started. It's kind of like when cars were introduced. It's kind of like when energy and oil was harnessed. We're going to see this new boom. And so I am decidedly in the latter of the two. I think that if you gave me a tool that would 5x or 10x my engineers, I would use it, and I would keep hiring. I would say, okay, now instead of doing 10 things, we're going to do 100 things, and we're going to go faster and move quicker, because I know that's what our competitors were doing. Sure, maybe you might have some bigger companies that slow hiring or scale back, but those of us that are trying to disrupt the status quo are going to be investing, and we can move faster. So I understand people that are concerned, that are kind of in the first camp, which is zero sum, where things are going to shrink. Maybe they might be trying to start off their law degree or law career, and they're thinking, well, am I going to have that articling student job or whatever it might be? But I think ultimately we're going to see a huge boom, and more people will be employed doing really interesting things. So I'm an optimist in that regard.
I would definitely agree with a lot of your points there, Kevin, especially the idea of it's not replacing people, humans, but what it might replace are redundant tasks that usually suck up half of your day. That's awesome. And then that means your developers, your team can be that much more creative and engaged in the work that they're doing, because it'll be even that much more challenging. So really great points. And as we wrap up a little bit here, do you guys have any Twitter Spaces coming up, or events or conferences that you'll be at?
Yeah, so we do Twitter Spaces with all of our integration partners, anybody that asks. So, we don't have, I can't think of one that we're doing right now. We've talked about it a couple, but Rich, if you want to do one, jump on. We'll have a fun one anytime you want.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think I might have to come to ETH Denver. So I was going to do ETH Paris or ETHCC because it's in Belgium this year. And last year I was at Token 2049 in Singapore, and it was amazing. And I went to Austin. But the more people I talk to, it sounds like everybody's going to Denver. So I haven't bought my flights, but I might need to get on that. So probably ETH Denver, maybe Austin, definitely Belgium, ETH Paris, and then Token 2049.
Nice. And I'm a big fan of Colorado and Ethereum, of course. So you marry the two and then, geek out for a while, and then the rest of the day you go skiing. Not a bad deal. So I would definitely recommend that one for sure. And who knows, you might see me there. And where can anyone on the planet kind of get in touch with Uniblock, learn more, especially for the developer community?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time and effort on our docs. So uniblock.dev, their docs are there, our blog is there. You can reach us there. Our Discord community under Uniblock, our Twitter/X community is there as well. I'm Kevin at uniblock.dev. Reach out. So yeah, we're pretty open. Reach out any way you want, but the website's a good place to kind of just get started.
Awesome. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. And for our listeners and viewers, check out Uniblock. Interesting tools that will, make, if you're a developer for Web3, make your life a lot easier, actually save you tons of money too. And there are lots of efficiencies built into it. So I would ask, hey, check it out. This is really cool. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us. We hope to have you back on.
Thanks for having me. Really fun.
Awesome.